Hi, everyone. Welcome to Real Talk Leadership Lessons from the Field. I'm excited to be here today with Dr. Caprice Greenberg, who is the chair of the Department of Surgery at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and our co host, DeJah Broaster, who is a recent graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison and a soon to be master's student at the University of Illinois at Chicago in the field of public health. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, want to just jump right in and start. And Caprice, let's start with you. Can you just share a little bit about your background and how you came to be in your position?
Sure. How far back do you want me to go?
As far as you want.
So I went to undergrad at med school at University of Chicago, and then I went to Boston, to the Brigham and Women's Hospital for my general surgery residency. While I was there, I got really interested in issues of safety and quality, and so got a master's of public health as part of my residency. I then stayed there for my fellowship in surgical oncology. Got my first job at the Brigham and Dana-Farber, had a very heavy research focus in health services research, was really interested in trying to understand quality and how we can make surgery safer for the patients we take care of and how we can make the culture better for the people that work in the discipline of surgery. Those are sort of the things that have driven me since that point in my career. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison for 11 years, where I was on the faculty in the School of Medicine there, and started a statewide quality collaborative for we had about 80% of the surgeons in the state of Wisconsin sharing data and working on making things better for patients, and was the vice chair of research there. And at that point, really realized that I was struggling with the fact that we do all this great research, but then we don't really pay as much attention to how it gets into practice and policy. And so tried a couple of different ways. Part of starting the academy was trying to figure out how to do that. But ultimately decided that really to meet those two goals, I probably should be a department chair. And so started looking for chairs of departments. I went to the Medical College of Georgia for 1 year, and ultimately ended up here at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and am now in my third year as the chair of the department.
And Caprice, could you just add? You mentioned the Academy for Surgical Coaching that you're referring to. What? That's a nonprofit organization that you started. What drove you to found that organization?
Yeah, so I was really struggling because I had been doing when we founded the organization, we'd been working in that field of surgical coaching, which is the idea that we can use coaching principles from other areas like athletics, music, teachers, to try to figure out how we can help surgeons to improve their own performance and their performance of the team that they work with in the operating room. And so we'd done a bunch of research and published a bunch of papers, but I really didn't have a mechanism for helping other people to get into the training that we developed or to really support people in the things that we'd learned. So we started the academy as a way to really bring what we'd learned through, really a decade of research to others within the field of surgery to try to help them to adapt coaching principles so that they could improve their performance as well.
So I'm hearing a thread kind of throughout everything of quality and patient care, right? That
Mhm.
kind of seems to be is that a good summary of what you focus on?
I would say quality and patient and safety and patient care, and then really culture and um, continuous performance improvement for people that work in the field of surgery as
Oh.
well.
Okay, so Deja, flipping over to you for just a second. What made you choose public health as your field of study?
I pursued public health. Um, Primarily, it came after, I guess, thinking about the environment that I grew up in, thinking about how much access or inaccess I had to certain things. When I got to college, I was kind of trying to just figure out what my major was, and I found community and environmental sociology. It allowed me to think back. Um, Growing up in Chicago, there are some places that have, let's say, overgrown vacant lots, and they're in food deserts. And I look at those spaces, and I think those can be something. I could use those spaces, I guess, to feed my community, or at least have them be a learning space that allows other people to learn how to grow their own food, learn about nutrition, have a safe and fruitful place to grow up in.
Well, I love your I statements there. I can use these. I can feed people. What's the driver behind that? What makes you say I want to step in and do this?
Because I feel like I haven't really worked with anyone who had a focus on the community in that way.
Mm.
Um, and that's just been part of my mission, finding a team to join and then kind of branching off, creating my own program of some sort, my own initiative.
How would you define leadership?
I define leadership as having the ability to as be transparent with your team, knowing when it's best to, you know, take charge or when it's time to pass the reins. Being honest with people when you're not sure what to do, but you're open to solutions. I think a lot of people think being a leader means you just control everything. You're the one that everyone turns to. But sometimes you can't do it all, and we have to be honest that we can't. And that's why you try your best to build a great team around you, people that complement you, people that you believe you can support, and vice versa.
Well, Caprice, how would you define leadership?
Yeah, I love what you said, Deja, about transparency and empowerment. I think that those are two really important parts of leadership. So I would define leadership as somebody who can really set a vision and then get a group of people to work towards that vision.
Mm.
And I think surrounding yourself with smart people that are motivated, that share your values, and then giving them something to work towards, I think really can make you a successful leader.
Shared values. Say more about shared values.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the things that motivate an individual really say a lot about how they want to spend their time, right? Listening to Deja talk, it's clear that you're motivated, Deja, by your community, by seeing places where there's gaps, by seeing, again, a vision, right? If there's an empty parking lot there, like you're like, this should be a garden. I can see what this should be. And so I think that that ability to see a vision is the first step. And then finding people that also see that vision and see that as something that's important, right? For other people, they wouldn't be interested necessarily in being in an inner city. They'd be more interested in being in a rural setting and solving problems there. Or, again, different pieces and different things motivate different people. And so I think when you can find people that have shared values and have an organization that has a mission that aligns with those values, I think that's when you can set that vision and sort of everybody just starts rowing in the same direction.
And Caprice, do you think your definition of leadership has changed at all over time?
I think the way that leadership was modeled for me earlier in my career was very different. It was much more hierarchical, much more top down. I mean, it doesn't get much more hierarchical than surgery. I think my own vision of leadership has probably always been much more collaborative, and again, much more focused on how do I find the right people, assemble the right team, define sort of roles and responsibilities, and to sort of let those people go. Right. Tell them what we're working towards and really just try to set the target and then maybe some guardrails around it. But other than that, I really don't have the bandwidth, the expertise, all the things that it takes to lead every aspect of the sort of enterprise that I'm responsible for. And so I have to be able to find those people and set them sort of on their way and know that they'll come back to me when they need support or when they need me to block and tackle or when they want to talk something through. And again, not that I'm going to have the answers, but maybe I could think of some good questions to ask them to help them figure out where they want to go.
Makes a lot of sense. And so, what about kind of, for lack of a better term, like growing your own leaders internally? Kind of, how do you kind of develop leaders within your organization? How do you think about that? How do you approach that?
So I think a lot of it is understanding what motivates people because not everybody wants to be a leader, right? Some people are very happy to keep their head down and do work and they get satisfaction from that component of it. So identifying the people for whom it's important and then helping them to figure out what their ultimate goal is. Where do they want to end up? And then sort of work backwards. So, what I'll do a lot of times is sit down and try to understand where somebody kind of wants to be at the end of their career and then say, okay, what competencies are we going to need to get you there? What roles do we have along the way that can help you to get that experience and those competencies that are going to allow you and set you up to get that position?
So really, you're kind of looking for like a mutual alignment, right? Something that's going to get you the work and kind of support that you need for your department right now, but that also is going to be a path for someone on the journey that they're trying to be on. Does that make sense? Is that something?
Yeah, I think that's right. I guess in my answer, I was focusing more on them and sort of internal development, but you're exactly right. I'm not gonna invest in and put somebody on that path if they're not aligned with what I need in the department at that time, because there's still work that has to get done, and there's still patients that have to be taken care of and students that have to be taught, and so we have to make sure that we have the right people in the right place at the right time. And hopefully it aligns with, again, where people are going on their own individual journey and moves them forward. I spend a lot of time talking to people and just saying, "Are you fulfilled? What can we do to make your job more fulfilling for you?"
And what kind of response do you get to that? How does that question go over?
COVID was tough in healthcare. I say that a lot. I think a lot of people really have questioned kind of where we've gone in healthcare and, some of the really, really big challenges and headwinds that we're facing. But I think we're working on ways to make sure that we can help people to get back to the things that brought us to be doctors in the first place.
Makes sense. And then Deja, when you think about kind of developing in your career, what is it that you're looking for? Like, what kind of guidance, what kind of support? You're going back to graduate school, so I know the kind of the education piece of this you've identified as key. What other kind of supports are you looking for to help you develop into the leader that you're aspiring to be?
Um, well, if you don't mind, like to backtrack just a little bit because when Caprice was speaking, I was like, that sounds like the kind of leader that I'm looking for. And I was wondering, if Caprice, you see yourself as a mentor also. I know some people, leader and mentor could be synonymous, but to others it's not. So, um, as mentorship in general is something that I also look for. And finding the right team to join is something I also look for. And so to hear that, um, Caprice, you kind of taught people through that process, trying to find where you guys align, what can you do to help them get to that end goal or help them get themselves to that end goal. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so if you don't mind answering, if you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that there's different hats I wear at different points for different people. So definitely serve as a mentor for some folks. And the most important thing that I learned and that I still adhere to is that I have teams of mentors. So there's not going to be one ideal mentor for people. And I tell them, you can walk around saying, "Are you my mom? Are you my mom? Are you my mom?" Right? But at the end of the day, like you're going to turn to different people for different things. And so I mentor people, kind of one off. I have longer term mentoring relationships with folks. But the other two, I think, really important things that I try to do is to coach. So rather than sort of conveying my sort of experience to someone for them to learn, I try to ask them good questions and sort of get them to bring out their own experience and their own wisdom. And so it's slightly different, but just a different way to sort of approach a one-on-one relationship. And then the last one is sponsorship, really looking for ways that I can help to promote people that I might not be as close to and might not have a relationship with, but somebody who, I might have noticed went above and beyond in some setting, and then is there a way that I can help them to advance their career? So those are three kind of important things that I think, I try to do to help people move along in their careers.
Yeah, could please kind of dig into that a little bit deeper. You're touching on kind of the difference between coaching, mentoring, and teaching. Could you just take that a little bit further and kind of really define the difference between those three things? Because we talk about that a lot with the Academy for Surgical Coaching, but I think it really applies to leaders and how they think about working with their kind of coworkers as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think of mentorship is, again, when you see somebody and there's something about them that you want to try to be more like. So you're trying to learn from their experience, learn how they got where they are. And so they're trying to share with you their experience so that you can figure out your path to sort of model after them. I think of a coach as somebody who is really trying to help you figure out your own thoughts on something, sort of your own path, where you're going to be really responsible for moving forward. But the individual that you're working with is really there as a facilitator almost. And then a teacher is really much more directed and less, again, based on experience as much as here's some body of knowledge that I'm trying to get to you. And then the last one that I had talked about, which I do think is important, is sponsorship, which I think a lot of times we don't pay as much attention to, especially as women, making sure that there's people out there that know you're interested in something and can put your name forward, for example. We're not necessarily always putting ourselves out there for leadership opportunities, for example. And so making sure a lot of people know when you're ready for the next step so that if people are asking around, your name can come up, they can put you forward. That can be really important.
Great point. That's an excellent point. Caprice, you mentioned long-term trajectory. What do you hope that your leadership legacy will be?
I hope that my long-term trajectory is that I made surgery better. My goal really as a leader has been, as we've talked about, to make surgery safer, more effective, more accessible for patients, but also to really change the way that we think about learning and the ways that we support each other and continuous quality improvement as people that provide care for surgical patients. And so I hope, at the end of the day that, people remember me for making contributions in both of those spaces. And I hope that when I leave, the University of North Carolina, that I've left the department a little bit better than it was when I got here.
And DeJah, a little bit longer till you're going to be looking back on your legacy. But what do you think about when you think about what you'd like to do, big picture, with your career?
I'm thinking a lot more about uh communities, but also individuals and the role that everyone plays in, whatever shared mission they have. And I'm kind of hoping I'm at least I was kind of thinking a while, Caprice, you were talking about your previous answer about women, putting themselves out there or not putting themselves out there as leaders. And then I was wondering, how long or did you ever have a point where you just didn't trust yourself to make or trust that you were on the right path or trust that you were making the right decision? I want to be the kind of person that instills that in people that you are making the right decision. You might go down the wrong path a little bit, but that doesn't mean that you're not, you know, capable. It's not an issue to join the team and then find this doesn't work for me. Just trust yourself. You can create your own team in the future. You can borrow things from the people that you meet along the way. Um, but just trusting that you end up just where you're supposed to be. All right. I was wondering, Caprice, if there was ever a time where you didn't trust yourself, and by that I mean you didn't trust that you were making the right decision, or you felt like you were going down a wrong path in your career.
All the time. I mean, I think that we all are human and we always question ourselves and the decisions that we're making. Can think back on my career and I have these pivotal points where I made decisions that people may or may not have agreed with. And I really trusted my gut, which wasn't easy to do, especially early in my career, which is kind of where you are now, Deja. And at the end of the day, the thing that you have to realize is you're the only one who really knows yourself, who really knows your values and your goals, who really knows what you're trying to accomplish, and that you're the one that can see the path from where you are to where you want to get to be. For me, just as an example, there was a period of time where I didn't operate, which for a surgeon is a really big deal. And it was because my husband was younger than me and he was still a resident, and we had 2 kids under the age of 2, and I had a really big research portfolio, and I was just really overwhelmed, and so I knew that I was either going to keep trying to do everything and my research would have fallen by the wayside, or I was gonna make a conscious decision to step back from the clinical side for a little bit while my husband finished training and do research full time, which is what I did, and it ended up working out for me and for my family and for my career. That would not have been the right decision for many people, but for me it was. And I think that we have those points in our careers, especially early on, where there's so many different paths you can take. And there's going to be lots of people with lots of ideas about what your path should be. And I think the most important thing you can do is to really listen to yourself and to trust yourself, which again is really hard when you're starting out and you don't have that strong sense of self. You don't have that strong sense of experience. You're really relying on those people around you to help you figure out, based on their experience, what you should be doing. all those things we were talking about with mentorship and sponsorship and coaching and all of that.
Oh, thank you for sharing that because I really needed to hear that, especially at a time like this before I even, make it to grad school and then you get into your coursework and at some point it's a bit too late to turn back or some people just go straight through because they feel like, well, I've already put this much time into it. Um, but yes, I really appreciate what you just said.
And I think, again, you'll be surprised at the different opportunities that will present themselves, right? Even just as you were saying, right? You decided to do a public health degree because you were interested in the maternal fetal medicine side of it. And then all of a sudden, you're hearing about environmental sciences, right? And so just because you start out in one path doesn't mean that you're not going to find a different path that you're going to want to switch over to. And I think everything that you learn and every experience that you get along the way is gonna make you a more unique and a more individual.
Caprice, what advice would you give yourself as a younger person? Like, if you could go back and tell 24-year-old Caprice anything, what would you tell her?
Probably that it's all gonna turn out okay. And
And the thing you haven't tell my 24-year-old self.
yeah, and again, to trust my instincts and to trust myself to make the right decisions, even when it might seem like you're swimming against the tide.
And there will be times that you feel like you're swimming against the tide. There will be days, weeks, months, right? I've had a couple of longer periods that's been the case. But DeJah, kind of back to your point or your question earlier, there's research that indicates that if you have just one, only one person that backs you, that tells you you've got this, that kind of pushes you and supports you, you're even more likely to be successful than if you go out on your own. And so you were already seeking out, I love your questions about mentoring, right? And how can you continue to learn? Finding kind of a team of folks, like Caprice mentioned, a team of mentors to learn different pieces from. But I would offer that if you can find and keep one person who's always in your corner no matter what, that's really going to help push you forward. I don't know, Caprice, if that resonates with you. It's been a big factor for me.
Yeah, I think so. Again, like, yeah, sometimes you'll go home and you'll have made a decision like, "Am I crazy?" And but having again that one person that you trust that you can bounce things off of and have them, sort of resonate that what you're seeing makes sense and that, you're not completely going off the rails, I think is really important.
I think that's exactly the person I want to be also. At the end of my career, I believe either you ask a question about, I suppose, where see myself towards the end or what kind of leader I want to be. But I want to be that one person, in your corner, the person that you talk to and you feel like things are falling apart or you're going the wrong direction. Um, because obviously I feel like that a lot. I am 24 and me being speechless right now is how I feel a lot. So I think it's important for me to be a mentor now in this stage and then a little after I get my career going and then at the end. Because I always do feel like I have something to share and I have to remind myself that I do have things to offer even when it feels like I have nothing.
There's a quote: to the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be the world. That can hang that up in your office.
Or
Outstanding. Outstanding.
I love that goal though, to be the person that people turn to when they're in trouble. Like, what a great goal.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, DeJah.
Um, Caprice, having heard all that I've said today, do you have any, I suppose, word of advice, or something to offer me as I, start my journey at becoming a leader?
Yeah, I would say to again, keep your values, know who you are, make decisions that advance the world in the direction that you think it should go. Find your people, find people that, again, share your values and want to see the same things. And as I said, I love that idea that you want to be the person people want to turn to when they're in trouble. Like what a great definition of success and of being a leader.
Yeah, Bruce, I love that you keep coming back to values, right? Kind of holding on to who we are, right? DeJah, holding on to who you are, and regardless of who agrees with you, kind of knowing the kind of true sense of your being and knowing what your goals are and just pushing ahead no matter what. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. I'm gonna close this out with a few lightning round questions. A couple of them are for you, Caprice. One in particular for you, DeJah. Caprice, for you to start, what's the best leadership advice you've ever received?
I think that you can't do it all and that you really do the most important thing that you can do is build a team of people that you trust and that trust you, and that you're gonna get further doing that than you are trying to go it alone.
Great advice. That's great advice. If you could sum up your leadership philosophy in one word, what would that word be?
Probably collaborative.
Collaborative. Makes sense. DeJah, what would your word be for how you would summarize your philosophy for leadership?
Also collaborative. Yes.
Great.
I love a good team. I love building. I love being able to grow and learn and doing it all at the same time. I mean, well, all as a group, I suppose.
Great. And then last question. So the last question for both of you is there a leadership mantra that you live by or a code that really sticks with you that you come back to when you need a little motivation or inspiration?
I don't know if it's a leadership mantra, but I will say that I have multiple places in my office where I've hung up from, Ted Lasso, and it's "Be a goldfish." And it's because goldfish have a short memory and they don't perseverate and they don't and they don't second guess decisions that they've made. And so for me, I just try to make the best decision I can with the information that I have and then really try to let it go and not beat myself up over decisions that I've made.
Great answer. DeJah, any that stayed out for you?
We might be in an echo chamber because I feel exactly the same. I suppose I just have a lesson for my current self, and hopefully my future self will look back on this video and feel like she's come a long way. Um, but always be transparent about when you need help and don't overthink things that you cannot change. I'm a serious overthinker. Um, fear of failure, but you fail sometimes. So you just need to think about the situation. Okay, it's done now. Time to regroup.
Well, I think that should be the last word. This was an outstanding conversation. Again, very grateful to both of you. Thanks so much for participating in Real Talk today.
Thanks, Audrey.